Success in Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
Welcome, and you are listening to the Financial Survival Network. It's Kerry Lutz, and, person you're about to hear from, good friend of the show, and really gives good advice and strategies on how to deal with the new economy, because that's what you're all confronted with. How do you survive and succeed in the new economy? I'm talking about Chris Martenson of peakprosperity.com, new book coming out entitled Prosper. And Chris, welcome back. It's always great to have you on.
Kerry, it's always a pleasure to be back on. How are you today?
All right. So the book, that's what you've been working on all these months when it's been hard to reach you, huh?
Well, yes, and Adam Taggart and I co-wrote this one. So this wasn't anything close to a solo job. It was actually a 50-50 deal. Plus, there was this is the first book we've put on audio tape, and I was the recorded voice for that. So that was kind of an investment in time. And it was all worth it because this really synthesizes everything we've been capturing through our website and doing in our seminars, which answers this fundamental question. People look at this crazy world and they go, well, what do I do? And it's not easy. We can't write an answer down on a 3x5 card. And a lot of things depend on if you're urban, suburban, or do you have a lot of skills or not? Do you have a lot of money or not? How old are you? All these things matter. But we've synthesized and distilled down in this book what we think are an action plan that anybody and everybody can and should follow who's interested in being resilient, knowing that the future could be filled with hardship, potentially, or disruptions for those who are unaware or unprepared. And as well, this isn't a prescription for how to live in fear for some future that may or may not ever arrive. It's a prescription for, if you do these things, you will be happier, healthier, have better relationships today. And if that future arrives, you'll be in much better shape than the next guy.
Yeah, which makes all the difference. So a little bit of planning and a little bit of preparation. And we're not talking about being a prepper here, but just really laying out a plan for possible scenarios that's going to help you get through this, whatever it might be.
Absolutely. And to be clear, some of the things we recommend you might find on a prepper website, but we go way beyond that. So here's an example. We think that we start with financial capital. That's the first chapter we talk about when we're really delving into different forms of capital. So financial capital, very important, right? Make sure it's managed safely. You don't have it with an MF Global or, it's not anywhere housed with where a banker can take it in some sort of nasty bail-in procedure. So, just understand the risks, have your financial capital sort of safeguarded. But once you've done that, none are so poor as those who only have money, right? So there are people out there who think, well, I've got a lot of money, if bad things happen, I'll be okay. And our advice is, no, you won't, because financial capital is just one form. Here's another form, very important, emotional capital. And what do we mean by that? It's when we look across the data, we discover that it's not ever an economic setback that really harms people. It's their reaction to it, right? And so, quick example is in the former Soviet Union, it collapses, and then all these people get thrown out of work. And in the next 8 years after that happened, from 1989 to 1997, over 50%, it was 54% of all the deaths recorded in Russia were due to alcohol, one way or another, direct poisoning or whatever. And so what happened was all these people who had jobs lost their jobs, and then they didn't know what to do with themselves, and so they drank themselves to death, right? And this typically middle-aged men. So here's an example. When we look back on it now, we understand that was one of the most exciting periods of capital formation in Russia's history. But the people who didn't have the emotional resilience to understand that, yes, their personal circumstances had changed, but now a new landscape had opened up. They only saw what they had lost. They weren't in a mental position to step into what the new opportunities were. This is an example of where if you can build your emotional capital up, which means learning the tools and techniques for releasing your attachment to the things that you say, well, this is me. I'm Chris. I have this successful internet company, and I have a house, and I have a wife, and I have 3 kids, I have this much money. If I'm attached to all of those things and then circumstances really change, I might find myself really stuck, if not damaged by that, if not even in a position to check out. Like some people in Russia checked out with drinking, but people check out with too much eating, too little eating, too much sleeping, too much video games, whatever the numbing choice happens to be. So that's an example where if you could be really, really rich, but if all of your identity is wrapped in that and it goes away, you're pretty well screwed at that point in time. And so financial capital can be converted into emotional capital if you put some effort there. There's seminars you can take, books you can buy, there coaching you can get, groups you can join. There are things you can do to figure out how to build that up. So that emotional slash spiritual capital is one of the other forms that we direct people's attention towards in this book and give examples and how to go about it and what it really means and all of that. So that's just one example. Out my window, though, I'll see another direct example, which is living capital. That's my garden and all the fruit trees I've got, and the fact that I take financial capital and spend it on compost and new varieties, planting stuff, and my garden is becoming steadily, it's like a bank for me. It's slowly increasing its principal balance out there. And I enjoy it today. I eat great food today. If I have to rely on it in the future, I'm going to be in a much better position than somebody who suddenly discovers they think maybe growing a little food would be a resilient thing to do, and they're starting from zero at that point in time, maybe with some lawn, right?
Mm-hmm. Sure, that makes complete sense. Having food, having a stockpile of food, and having the ability to grow it should the need arise, or as a supplement. I mean, my oldest friend lives in a suburb of Boston, Mass, and he has not a very big yard, but like he's got a 20 by 40 foot garden that free, well, not free, but he grows his own tomatoes, his own squash. I mean, you name it. This guy grows everything. And it's really amazing how much you can produce from the land with just a small amount if you work at it.
Absolutely. And that's an example. Of course, in living capital, we also throw our own bodies, our own health. Obviously, something you can spend money on to get a CrossFit membership or get a good nutritional consult and figure out how to eat better. Those pieces go together. So, of course, it doesn't do any good to enter the future, no matter what future arrives, if you're in poor health, poor shape. And by the way, not for nothing, but our food system in the United States is really highly toxic. As if you couldn't just look at the obesity explosion that's happened and understand that something's not quite right with our food system. Or you look at the number of people who have metabolic diseases now, like diabetes type 2 or pre-diabetic conditions, things like that. It's a full on, if we were a rational, logical country, we'd be saying, stop, something's really wrong here. If terrorists were doing this to us, we'd be just absolutely outraged, by what's happening. Of course, it's food corporations doing it, so we don't seem to read about it. But there's lots of steps people can take. We have data now. We have understanding about how to become healthier in ways that really begins with what you eat. And that's not a big surprise to anybody, I'm sure, listening to your program. But it turns out there's a lot of room for education on this particular subject at this point, because there's a lot of confusion.
Oh, for sure. I always say what passes for food in this society, and you're seeing the product of it. Just go to a mall, and I don't know about you. I mean, I was overweight myself, and I made the decision that I had to get healthy again, or I wasn't going to be around too much longer, and lost the weight and started eating healthy. And the amazing thing, you lose that weight, you have so much energy, you just can't even believe how much energy you have getting rid of, because you're carrying around like 2 suitcases with you wherever you go. And you lose it, you get into shape, you exercise. I always exercised, fortunately, but you start doing these things and it really makes such a huge difference. It's really amazing in your mental attitude. And it makes you more resilient and able to deal with whatever the powers that be wind up dishing out next, which we can only imagine.
Exactly right. And both Adam Taggart and I both had our own health journeys. Both of us were also overweight, and I was just fully living how people in this country live. I hadn't really examined it, and was eating things that turned out to not be good for me. And I had to go through a variety of learnings around that, and got a good naturopath, the nutrition consultant, and got my own little fingerprint reading of what my body was reacting badly to, and just shifted my eating regime. I won't call it a diet. It's not dieting. I just shift what I eat.
Yeah, lifestyle.
And
lifestyle.
Huge benefits have come forward. And so really that's what this book is largely wrapped around. Is there's so much that we can know that if we just put our minds to it, there's so much information out there about how to live happier, live healthier, live more abundantly, live with greater prosperity. And there's so much arguing and militating against that because of the information we get through the media. It's just it's PR copy from corporations who have an interest in making more money, typically.
Well, if you want to find out how bad that stuff is for you, especially fast food, just try not eating it for a year or 10, 12 months, and then go to your favorite fast food joint and get a burger and see what it does to your stomach. Once you do that, I guarantee you will have no compunction about eating it again, because it's shocking. It's really shocking.
It is. I bet if somebody, picked up some roadkill and ate it and felt that badly, they'd say, of course I did. Of course I ate roadkill. And they would say, yes, this is awful. But you're right. You would feel just maybe even worse eating that burger from the fast food joint. It's astonishing. And one of my favorite things that I saw when I was in Iceland about 5 years ago is they actually have on display the last cheeseburger and fries ever sold at a McDonald's. They kicked McDonald's out of the country, gone, right? But they had the last cheeseburger and fries sold, and that was like 9 years prior. And they have the burger and the fries on display, and they look literally like they were sold yesterday. Nothing, and they didn't have them in a special. They were just sitting out, in a display at a museum.
That's funny. Well, it could be one day in the Smithsonian. You never know. But even the fast food companies are being forced to stop, the really bad things that they were doing, like the pink slime at McDonald's. They had to stop that. So there is hope here that things are changing, and they're starting. I mean, granted, it's not like a health food store going to Mickey D's, but I would venture to say, Chris, at some point they're going to be organic and health driven. They don't have a choice. They're gonna die if they don't. I mean, that's the trend.
Well, it's been, I think a very good piece of news is that Chipotle said they're doing non-GMO now. So that you have an opportunity to go to a so-called fast food joint and buy stuff that's not doesn't have this GMO stuff in it, which should be my right as a citizen to decide whether I want to eat something or not. I should have at least that fundamental right. But of course, corporations are convinced I shouldn't have that right, and that we shouldn't label these things, and people shouldn't know about them because they've decided that these things are healthy and safe. Of course, there's lots of data to suggest that certain types of GMO modifications are not healthy for us as individuals, and certainly not for the biosphere, certainly not the toxic pollens that come off of the BT-infused corns and things like that when you get to the bees and the butterflies and all that other stuff. So, yeah, I think it's good that corporations are beginning to realize that people actually do have some say in this. And of course, this is really important. Each one of us votes every time we spend $1. So I'm really choosing to buy organic and to eat non-GMO whenever possible. And the buying the organic part for me is really about this. When I look at what happened when the United States started and allowed the sale of the neonicotinoid class of pesticides that both Syngenta and Bayer make, that started in 2006. The colony collapse disorder of bees started being noticed in 2007. It's just gotten to epidemic proportions. And these are really, nasty compounds. You just coat a kernel of corn with this genic, you plant it, and there's so much seeps into that plant that by the time it's an adult corn plant, it's so toxic that any insect that munches on it dies immediately. So that's how powerful these pesticides are. And it's an astonishing thing. So for me, eating organic is a vote against that practice as much as potentially it's also a vote for my own health.
Yeah, and not just organic, but locally produced. It's a big deal because many don't know how damaged food gets when it has to be transported long distances. And when you get it local and it hasn't been frozen, flash frozen, or dehydrated, freeze dried, whatever they do to it, it tastes better and it's so much better for you.
And it supports your local economy too. And so we buy as much as we can locally.
Absolutely.
Sometimes a little bit more expensive, but that's what it costs to raise food in the Northeast, and for these farmers to be here, that's just they're not gouging anybody. This is what it just costs more to grow food in a sustainable and responsible way.
And don't forget, the value is there. It really is greater value, and I think that's so important that you need to realize that. You pay more, but you're getting more. Your body's going to like it better. But getting back to the book, so the book is Prosper. It's by Chris Martenson. Obviously, you're going to be able to get it on Amazon. Chris, where else do we get the book?
Well, we're taking pre-orders right now through our website. We've got a big prominent announcement of that came out on Friday. And so it's still up on the front page of our website. And Amazon's another great way to get it, of course. And it's available, as I mentioned, in we're going to paperback, ebook, and also audiobook. So yeah, really happy with that, and hopefully it'll be well received. And we're getting it into Spanish soon, and we'll get it into the Latin American market, which was very receptive to the whole crash course message as well. So yeah, we're excited. It's fun. It's fun to have this out, and the thing is that. Kerry, the information that's in this book took us, we've just been working on gathering sort of this framework and the data in here for years, and this is really around what helps people. And, most people, they come in contact with the idea that the world is a little bit more uncertain than they thought, or maybe downright scary, what they see coming in the future. And they really want to know how to prepare. And, for many people, they just get short-circuited at that so-called prepper stage. They either reject it out of hand, and so they don't go any further, or they get stuck there and they don't go any further. And so this isn't about although we recommend people should have some stored food, and you should have into the material capital section. We talk about all the things you might get, but that's just under material capital. Sure, have some flashlights and have your basic survival stuff, and make sure you can feed your family if the food trucks don't come to your town. Do all of that. Yeah, but that stuff that's easy. Doesn't take that much time. Don't get stuck there, because to be really resilient, you need to think about, knowledge capital is what you know and the experiences you have. We talked a little bit about material capital, but, even more is putting in solar systems, if that makes sense for you, or really getting your homestead up and ready. And then social capital, really big one. It's who do you know and how well do you know them, and how would you go about building deeper social connections, because all of the data tells us that once an economic order collapses or frays, like Zimbabwe's, right, their dollar collapsed, right, and the people who fared the best were people who had social connections, and because they knew how to find stuff, what favors they could call upon, how to trade in favors. They had sort of a new economy could build around who you know and how much they trusted you, as much as anything. And so even people who prepared, who saw rightly that the Zimbabwe economy was going down the tubes, the dollar was going to go into hyperinflation, the Zimbabwe dollar, and it did, is put away as much food as you want. And then a year later, things are still operating and your food has run out. And so your social capital, really, really important. Something that we often see just either minimized or even rejected in a lot of so-called prepper sites. So that we're just taking a more holistic approach. And we're also saying, look, this isn't going to be something that's, it starts to collapse on Tuesday and it's over in 3 months. We kind of look at the future as a never-ending, the new order has been shifted. There's a whole new landscape out there that's going to be with us for the rest of everybody who's listening to this lives.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you. And in the long run, I think it'll be for the better. Short run, a lot of pain and suffering. So get the book Prosper, and you find it at Chris's site, peakprosperity.com. And as always, you'll find a link in the show notes to Chris's site, financialsurvivalnetwork.com. Go there, sign up for our latest webinar that's coming up November 5th at 9 p.m. Eastern Time, how to pay off your mortgage in 5 to 7 years without really trying. Chris, we will talk to you again shortly. And when the book comes out, make sure you send me a copy. I will read it and review it.
Absolutely, Kerry. And thank you for the opportunity to talk about it today.
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.